Okay, Jessica, real quick, just give the audience an idea what Conjuring the Witch is about.
So Jurassic Park, I loved it when I saw it because I have always loved dinosaurs.
Oh, no. Hey, I was talking about, we want to know what Conjuring the Witch is about, not Jurassic Park.
But seeing them for the first time, like seeing those little dinosaurs, it was so magic. And it's never lost that magic. So to see that first Jurassic Park and that moment where Grant takes off his glasses and then, jaws drop and then they span up and then the music goes, all of that is so fucking cool, man. I love it.
Jessica, just tell us about Conjuring the Witch.
So I have this idea, and it's very based in reality, and it's real people doing things. But also, what if the woods were haunted? So that's my synopsis for the book. I did it.
Available May 2nd. Pre-order the paperback on Ghoulish's website, and you can get a signed book plate, I believe. Double check. Go to the website. And so the thing that I was going to start out by talking about was that I figured like I had to honor your background of podcasting by because we're going to be talking about books, and I'm having a beer, so
Nice.
little books, little booze
Little bit,
to
little booze. I'm having a beer too.
set
So
the well, cheers.
cheers, sir. We're all set tonight.
So starting out talking about you in general, um, you got the new haircut. It's ostensibly for going to the Ghoulish Book Festival. So, well, before we dive into the book, let's just talk about that a little bit because that's a little bit of a journey for you. You're going from Kentucky, right? You live in Kentucky. So, are you driving? Are you flying? What's going on?
I am flying. I went last year to. This is the second Ghoulish Book Festival, so I went last year. And it was amazing. It was such a fun, community driven event. It feels like you're home with a lot of people. It's a really wonderful, cool time. So I knew I wanted to go back. And when Max and I were talking about the new book coming out, he was like, maybe we can make it coincide with the festival somehow. And I was like, it's possible if you can. I don't know. I already wrote it. So
Yeah.
that was like, okay, this is a thing. I've got something to promote with them. I'd love to be there again. Absolutely excited. But yeah, we're taking a little flight. I'm bringing my husband with me this year so I can have a hype man and all that kind of thing. But
The table guy or whatever, like selling the
yes,
books.
I need my table guy there.
um, are you doing anything like panels or readings or anything, or are you just
Hmm.
going as you are? Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a reading. I'm reading from Conjuring the Witch, which I read from that last year before it was even finished. I just kind of wanted an audience to hear what I had done so far to get their reaction. So I've already kind of done that. I'm going to read a different part this year. And then I'm doing a couple panels, one on witches, surprise, surprise, and one on dysfunctional families, which is another thing that I'm just really good at. So
Good at or knowledgeable about?
knowledgeable of.
Okay.
I'd like to think I've turned a page on that, but yeah.
Um, cool. Have you done well? Did you do stuff last year as well? Did you panel or read or stuff?
Yeah, I did a reading last year. Like I said, I read from the
Oh,
book that
duh, you already
wasn't
said that. Yeah.
published yet. No, that's fine. But I last year my reading was with Laurel Hightower. And
Okay.
this year my reading is also with Laurel Hightower because she is also from Kentucky. And I feel like that's how we got grouped together, but it's like perfect. It's such a wonderful, amazing time to be able to share that space with her for a few minutes. And yeah, last year I did panels on crime in horror. I actually moderated that one and I prepared zero for it. I didn't think of it. I didn't think of it as being something I should prepare for. So other people were talking about moderating and they had notes and everything written out. And I was like, oh man, I should have done that. That seems like I would need to have questions. So John Foster was there. I don't know if you know John, but
I believe so. Yeah.
he was like, you can borrow my notes. I have tons of notes. I'll just share with you on the panel. And I was like, okay, great. So I wasn't asked to moderate this year.
Could be a coincidence. It could be a coincidence.
I'm going to tell you, I've got a little bit of a head cold today. So if I have to do it, sorry, but I'm
That's okay.
braving through it.
Well, I appreciate you. We could have rescheduled, but I appreciate you
No,
sticking it out.
no, I really
Um,
needed to do this.
yeah. So, wait, um, I had another thought about cons and stuff. So, all right. So you've done the Ghoulish Books Festival last year, this year. Have you done other stuff? And I'm gonna add on. And I don't know where I got this from, but you identify pretty solidly as a horror author. But like my mind also kind of associates you with crime. So I'm wondering if like there was any kind of crime stuff that you've done in the past as
No.
well. No.
Yeah, no, I really haven't done a whole lot. I went to an AWP when it was in Minneapolis, and that was a million years ago. And at that time, I wasn't even doing horror. I did a reading for Menacing Hedge, an
Hmm.
offsite reading with them, and it was just literary. It was
Okay.
not a horror thing at all. I kind of refound my roots in horror the last few years. Uh,
Maybe I'm maybe I'm associating you with David James Keaton too much because he's pretty solidly
Maybe
in that.
he's my
And I know
crime
you guys are
guy.
buddies, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Question answered. No, I have not done a whole lot of festivals. Kind of the first book, Antioch, came out in 2020, and that was a bummer time to have your first book released.
Yeah, because it was like the fall of 2020, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
October 2020, everything's shut down. Nobody wants to see my shining face in person. So I just did not do a whole lot for it. Really, the Ghoulish Festival last year was kind of my first big hurrah, even for Antioch, even though it was a couple years old at that point. But
Yeah.
things have started now.
That, yeah, I got to tell you, because I obviously was doing the podcast during the pandemic, and one of the big topics was just even with big names, like we had Max Brooks on and like talking to him about like pivoting and promoting during a pandemic and stuff. And yeah, that was, and I think that ended up, what ended up being helpful for people was like just doing like,
Yeah.
virtual events through libraries and bookstores and stuff like that. But like, yeah, not the best timing for you. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Had no idea that that was what was going to happen when I signed that contract, but it all worked out for the best. It was all good. And
Yeah. I
I
feel
have
like though perpetual motion machine publishing or Ghoulish, whatever. I'm assuming. Did he just change the name of the company? But anyway,
yeah, I think so.
it like subtly, not like with an announcement or like a press release. It just suddenly, is a different name. But I feel like Max seems like he's pretty good at like really, he's not the type of small press that just like publishes a thing and then like moves on to the next thing and doesn't have time to talk about it. Like he still seems like he's showing like he almost has like a fan enthusiasm for the stuff that he's putting out. It feels like is that
Yeah.
your experience?
Oh, Max is the greatest, and I could not have asked for a better publisher because I basically abuse him as if he's my agent. I'm like, well, good news, you've published my book. I don't know what to do about that now. And he's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this thing. We're going to do this thing. And he'll set up all this stuff for me. And I'm like, thank God that I had somebody to kind of hold my hand through that because I had
Yeah.
no idea. But he has been great with all of that stuff. He's always down to talk about it. He wants to help me promote it. If I have an idea, he's like, yeah, that's a great idea, or no, you shouldn't do that, or whatever. I don't think he's ever told me not to do anything, but
Yeah, it's hard to see him being like of all the people that I've spoken to, it's hard to imagine him being like, I don't know if that's a good idea because he seems like he's
yeah,
pretty open to most things. So
pretty much. Unless I was like, I think I should buy a bunch of my books and burn them, and he'd be like, maybe not that one. But
yeah, that doesn't
outside of
sound,
that,
yeah.
he's
Um,
wonderful. And you hear like horror stories about some indie presses, from your friends or whatever who got burned. And so I feel eternally grateful that I fell in with a really good press. And perpetual motion machine publishing was hard to say, but unfortunately, ghoulish with my accent sounds real
Oh,
dumb. And I tried to
oh
talk
yeah.
to him about that. He didn't care. I was like, I can't say ghoulish and sound normal. That's not good. But that's where we are.
Well, and then so another thing I had heard him talk somewhere, or maybe it was when I was interviewing him. It's all, I'm in my mid 40s now, so memory isn't what it used to be, but I remember
Yes.
him like smartly saying things like he just does stuff like submits books to publishers weekly and stuff like that. Baseline promotion stuff to get books on the radar of
Mm-hmm.
people that if you just relied on social media, wouldn't see it. So he's got some like savvy as far as like that's concerned. So when people get published through him, I feel like okay, at the very least, so like he's published a couple of David James Keaton's things, I think, and
Yeah.
like my impression was okay, he at least has someone who cares about the process. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. It's big.
Yeah, good. Well, obviously, because you're going to their festival and participating in it. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
um, here, you mentioned earlier the panel and the not preparing and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
I've kind of switched in my mind to like I don't have prepared questions, and I used to prepare questions all the time when I would interview authors, and I feel like I'm kind of going more on just the feeling of the tone of the conversation, and so um, the benefit of this is I can edit whatever I want to, so I might even edit this explanation out. But I I want to talk about obviously Conjuring the Witch because that's what you're here, and that's what you primarily need to promote. Um, so jumping into that book, Conjuring the Witch is your second book, and it's the first one I've read. I bought Antioch; it's right there.
Yeah.
Um, but I bought it at a time where I was going through kind of a cancer battle, so
Right.
it wasn't as easy to. So,
Oh, I
regrettably,
can't
I
even give you shit
I
now.
know. Well,
Okay.
that's why I
Okay.
get to drop the cancer card whenever I want to, and it's like one of the
Fine.
it's unassailable. But so, Conjuring the Witch is the first thing I've read of yours, and I'd always known of you as someone in the world of books in various ways. So it was really nice to kind of get to know you and see your voice as a writer and everything. Um, and I don't know, you probably saw on social media I posted that I was going to be talking about this book soon. And one of the things, so I'm just jumping right into themes because like this
Okay.
is one of the things I was most excited about. I said it's fun that I read this so soon after Cassandra Caws The Salt Grows Heavy because one of the themes in that book was like there's even a line in her book that says like it's not a bad thing to be a monster or something like that.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about that is like and we can shy away from spoilers as much as you want to. So,
Hmm.
but one of the themes, I think one of my favorite themes, there's a few things that I want to talk about, but one of my favorite kind of themes or feels or tones of the book was the whole idea that like we, sometimes people do monstrous things, but we don't often look at what the circumstances were to get them to that monstrous place. And that's something that you explore a little bit. So, um, a lot, maybe, I guess. But anyway,
Yeah.
what where did that come from, and was that kind of like one of the driving parts of wanting to tell this story, or was that something that just fit into the overall kind of like thing that you were doing?
Um. Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of something that I want to explore. Something I like in what I consume is you see a character and through their whole arc, like by the end of the story, they're awful. They're a horrible person. But at the beginning, they're not, and it's just
Mhm.
baby steps the whole way
Yeah,
there to where you can say, "Well, I would see myself doing this," or "I would see myself doing this," and then but you can't start at that horrible thing because nobody sees themselves as the villain, nobody sees themselves as this is that awful thing. So you have to bring the audience to that point where they can say, okay, yep, I'm there, I'm with you, I get it, I
yeah.
understand how we made it to this point. um, yeah.
So, um, yeah, and you said that that's something that you like in other stories. Are there any like inspirations or other, I guess, books or movies or anything that you were thinking about with that part of it, or any part of the book, not necessarily just that theme?
Not necessarily that theme. And we put this, so the book by Jac Jemc, in the grip of it, or the grip of it, I think.
Oh yeah, it's down here somewhere.
Okay.
Anyway,
Uh, there was such a quiet unsettlingness to that book when I read it, and it's been years now since I read it, but that was something I was like, man, to do that, that's something kind of special, just to make you go ooh in your chair a little bit. So that was something I kind of kept in mind, not necessarily um, with the theme of the book, but just the idea of how to make somebody feel uncomfortable in their home.
like the effect that it had on you, kind of.
Yes, yeah, that.
Nice. Yeah, I own it but haven't read it, and like honestly, that's the curse of loving books, is like there's often
Oh
books that
yeah.
you've. But she did a reading that I hosted one time, and was a lovely person, and really enjoyed her stuff. I bought. She has another book that just came out too, and I bought that. So I have two of her books, but I haven't read either of them. So
I have
um,
three. I've read two, and I'm in the middle of a third one. So
yeah,
yeah, she's really wonderful. Highly recommended if anybody's looking for a book recommendation from me.
nice. The grip of it, yeah, sounded like it was some really creepy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of, so I guess we could say, so tone is something that stood out for me in this book, like the way the things aren't right kind of make you
Mm-hmm.
feel was something that I was feeling. And I guess my mind goes to, I would assume, like if I were just going to tell someone what I thought you were doing, um, having the location be what it was would be a factor in that. And then having religion be a factor were things that I would think were not necessary but helpful to setting the kind of tone that the book pulled off. So like, did you start out with those things in mind, or like was and well, let's focus on location first. Was the location and the setting and something important to you, or did it just kind of fit with what kind of story you needed to tell?
No, oh, very much so. Yeah. So it's. I grew up in a small town, and on a farm, and so the Conjuring the Witch is set in the town of Lilin, which is make believe, but it's a small farm based sort of town. Everybody knows each other. There might be one stoplight. Um, my town has two stoplights now, but that's neither here nor there. So that was something that, yeah, was important to me because it's what I know, but it's also deeply spooky to be out and there's nothing around you. There's danger in a city because there's so much there and you can't see everything. But I feel like in a small town or an isolated area, or you're out in the cornfield, things are there that you can't necessarily see. It's it's that trick that your eyes play on you in the dark. And so a lot of the setting for the book was just being in my own backyard and staring into the dark and thinking about what would be creepiest to happen to me.
That, yes, and that definitely came across. And so like the first thing that I think of too, so they are on like the husband's family's farm, and like he's taken over the farm, and so it is definitely very rural.
Mm-hmm.
um and that's one of those things that like for me, and I'm not, I'm a scared person, you know, and I think that people who are scared of things kind of gravitate toward horror sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
or a lot. And the first thing I think of, like the thing, like the terror could be like a light switch. Like if there's daylight, I'm like, at least I can see what's going on. But the moment it's dark, it's like
Yeah.
there could be 30 elephants within 100 feet of me and I'd never know it. And that's like, you just don't know. Like there could, you know, you don't know what it could be. Running away from something in the middle of a field or a forest or something could be fatal. It could be,
Yeah.
you know, life threatening. So nature itself is just set to work against you. So I think, yeah, that definitely helps with the tone for the book.
I am clumsy in the broad daylight, so if I'm trying to walk through the woods or a field or anything like that in the middle of the night, forget it. I'm gonna fall down. I'm gonna break my leg. So that's, yes, you're absolutely right. That's what horror is made for. Those moments where you can't trust your senses.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I was at least right about the setting being important for like the tone of the book. Um, I also kind of had a feeling that it was drawing from your personal experience. Are you? But you're not living where you grew up, right? Are you?
Yeah, I am.
Oh,
Not in the exact same spot, but the same town.
oh, okay. I don't know. So religion definitely plays a part in this too.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like in storytelling that there's different ways you can depict religion. You can depict religion as supernatural and spooky itself, or you can depict it as like good, I guess. Probably not in a horror
That's
story.
one way to go.
Um, you could, or you can depict it as like kind of like a system that grinds you down, or a system that works against you. My reading of it was more like the system thing than like the supernatural spooky thing.
Hmm.
Um, what for you was important about the religion aspect? Was it just because it was like a small town operation thing, or was it important that the church was part of it?
Yeah, that was kind of my first idea when I was tinkering around with what was going to happen in this book, was that okay, we'll have the religious aspect because that's kind of the way, historically speaking, that people control people is through religion. And that was the idea, that we're going to have some sermons in here that are going to work to control people and
Yeah,
kind of bring that in. I So I know that in small towns, religion is pretty huge, just kind of for the fellowship of it. Like that's your day to day. If you're a part of a church, you have a church family and a church community, and there's a prayer chain that you call somebody on if there's a sadness or whatever. Like it becomes a huge portion of your life if that's what you're into. And so that's an easy built-in community to give, kind of.
is there any of your own experience growing up or as an adult that's informing this, or is this just something that you wrote?
Not a lot. Okay, so kind of a little yes, a little no. I did grow up in a Christian family. I don't consider myself Christian now. Not that that's important, but that's where we are. But the church that I grew up in was actually kind of fine. And
Yeah,
I know, like, I hear, a lot of people have awful stories about that, and I totally respect that. And I know that that's true. Um, the one I grew up in was pretty mild. It was pretty mellow. Nobody was really, you know, after me to change my ways or anything like that. Uh, and actually, I tried to do a little homage to that in the book because I grew up in a Methodist church, which is whatever. And there's a point where the church in the book mainly is not a Methodist church, and there's a point where one character is like, hey, I'm thinking of leaving, I hear there's a nice little Methodist church down the road. And so that was a little thing that was for my grandma there, so she can read the book and be like, well, she's not talking about us, we're not the terrible people, which is again a very Christian thing to think. We're not the terrible people, it's the other ones. But yeah, and by and large, there are um, a lot of people that I know and churches that I went to, like a friend's church or something, that was a very different experience. And it was a very like telling you you're going to hell every week and here's why you're going to hell. And it's like really frightening, sort of. So that was something that
yeah.
kind of informed that.
So I'm really two things. First
Yeah.
of all, I'm really glad you mentioned that part about the like Methodist, the nice Methodist church, because if you didn't bring that up, that was literally the next thing I was going to mention, because like that it honestly was like a refreshing kind of thing. And you might have put it in as an Easter egg to the family or whatever, but to
Mhm.
me as a reader, I was like, this is a great kind of juxtaposition of like to see the insanity of what's going on, knowing that like if I was just in this other building 5 miles away, none of this would be going on,
Yeah.
was like really effective. So whether you meant it or not, like I thought that was like a really great part of it, where it was just like, because often in storytelling, when you're in this situation where things become so extreme, you're just kind of like immersed in that, and you don't get to think of the perspective of like, well, it's not always like this everywhere. And so that was a cool it was honestly one of my favorite parts of the book, was just someone just casually saying like, we could just go to this other place.
Yeah. Well, but that's very true. You know, you get immersed in what you've got going on and what your place is doing, and like this is the way. And then, but genuinely, you go 5 miles down the road, there's a whole other place you could be going, and it's not going to be like that. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I've been watching, not exclusively, but lately I feel like I've been watching more and more documentaries and cult documentaries.
yeah,
So uh, for anybody who's not aware, you can like go into Netflix and find like probably a dozen different sex cult documentaries that came out within the last like 12 months or whatever. So they're everywhere. But like
hmm,
the whole thing is, you like you give yourself permission to do X, and
yeah,
then X becomes normal, and then once X is normal, then Y seems like it's not as terrible as if like you hadn't been doing X. And so there's like, that's the whole thing about an organized kind of structure that, you know, people make you exist in, is like it's easy to go kind of off the deep end once you keep justifying this, then this, then this. And so I feel like you did a good job of representing that in the book too.
oh, thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. So cults. The other thing, I one of the things I highlighted was a line. There's a line in the book that, and I don't remember the context of it, but I just really love the line where it says, "Nothing good ever followed a visit from the Lord."
I don't remember
So,
that at all, but I do like that.
which, that's interesting. No, but like it really fit the moment, and I was like, "Oh, I'm highlighting this because this was really good." So, yeah. I my background, I was raised non-religious, and so I feel like sometimes I have trouble connecting with the religious aspect of a story, because like, um, and I think maybe that's why that line jumped out to me, is because like if you show me a church, I'm never like, oh, this is the good guy of the story. Like
This is
it's
gonna go
never that.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, and probably that's pretty common for a lot of people with storytelling, is like it's automatically the bad guy kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I actually put like a weird church moment in Antioch too. And so I was, you haven't read it, but I was really worried like people are going to think that this is my thing. So I really kind of have to get away from that. But it's not my thing. It's just, you know, it's some
well,
evil.
but
I'm
the other
kidding.
thing, it's, I've actually kind of like evolved past that, where and even in your story, in your book, sorry, it's not that everybody is evil.
No.
It's very clear that some people made some bad choices a long time ago, and that has perpetuated. It's kind of poisoned
Hmm.
what otherwise might have been a fine place. So I feel like that's how this story plays out.
Yeah. There's some great and lovely people there that I care about deeply. I created a lot of people and I like them a lot. And that was one of my biggest things. I was like, man, I really hope people don't dislike this person or this other person throughout the thing, which is a bizarre thing to think about, but I was worried about it for a while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that you represented it well. Like the structure of it is like, and I think that the structure. So the structure of it is, and I don't think we've spilled anything yet, but like, there, for the most part, we see the people who want to do good, and they just need help figuring out how to do that. And then
Yeah.
there's just a couple people who are like, hey, you know, this is what it is, and they're wrong. So I feel like you represent that well. I will say that.
Okay, good. Good.
um,
Okay.
there's a moment specifically with Steve who is pretty blameless for the most part in the book ish. He's got his flaws, but like he means well and everything. But like he's straight up told like you didn't do anything to stop this,
Hmm.
and that puts things into kind of stark relief about the idea of like inaction is as bad as like doing the bad thing. And that was something that I thought was really powerful and important for the story as well.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my favorite moments too, because you can tell I wrote it, but Steve, it's an aha moment for Steve too, because
Yeah,
he's being told, he's like, I didn't do anything, and they're like, exactly, you didn't do
yeah,
anything. So that was a big moment for him of realization, that I hope is kind of a moment for other people as well.
right. And it's that kind of guilt where it's like you don't understand that you're guilty because you don't understand. Like I'll tell a quick story. I had a friend all through like junior high and high school who was like one of my closest friends who transitioned when she was in her 30s, I think. And this was the first person I'd known who had transitioned. And it took me a long time. Like I was supportive the whole time, and I
Yeah.
loved this person. I loved her, and like there was never a moment where I wasn't like like please be the person that you are. But it was still like hard for me to reconcile things like I got hung up on like, oh, my memory is of this person, not this person, and I couldn't figure out why am I wrong about this. I know I'm wrong, but I can't figure it out. It took me so long to realize that it was like they were really that person the whole time, but like
Right.
they didn't know how to say that. And so when I had that kind of like light bulb in my head, I was like, oh, I knew that something was off, and I knew it wasn't something they did, but I knew that I was wrong and I couldn't figure out why. And I feel like we have some of those things too, where it's like, I'm not doing anything wrong, but I didn't do the right thing. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of as bad. And I won't say that I was a bad friend, but like there was this kind of lingering, like I know that something's off and I know that I need to figure it out and I just didn't know how. So like, um, again, like Steve was pretty blameless in the whole story, but at the same time, like Steve could have acted differently.
Right. Right.
Like in ways where this is the most important person in your life. Why did you make that decision?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have we've talked this long without mentioning witches,
Oh
and you're
yeah.
paneling about witches, right? So we might as well um, talk about the witch aspect of it. Did you come to this with the idea of it specifically being witch related?
No, I didn't. The My initial idea was just a very human, based in reality aspect. And then I really got excited about the woods being around it. One of the things I like to do when I write is just take every possible idea I have and just mush it all up into one thing. Because who knows, I may never write another book. I need to get it out there. So I was like, but so I have this idea, and it's very based in reality, and it's real people doing things. But also, what if the woods were haunted? So
Yeah,
that's my synopsis for the book. I did it. So that came later, but
yeah.
it was all going to be very metaphorical, witch stuff, and then it got a little more uh, supernatural.
Um, did it? Did you feel like it needed to go there, or was it just cool to go there?
It was just cool.
Yeah, I thought so.
It was just a lot of
um,
fun to do.
there, well, another kind of, and this might be, if this spoils things, we won't go into this part. But another parallel I'm drawing between that Cassandra Cause assault grows heavy and this. is the whole idea that like and we talked about it when I interviewed Cassandra, was the whole idea that, people always tell you to be the better person and not do not respond in kind, not do violence for violence, no eye for an eye kind of thing. Um, but it's so I find that disingenuous when like the when the happy ending is that I was the better person and whatever. It's not satisfying, but to see like I'm gonna use the word rage because the word rage absolutely appeared multiple times in the book. When you see that rage and when you see someone finally um, deciding this is as much as I am, going to take, and now I'm going to show you my power, I think that that's super satisfying. So again, if that spoils too much, like we don't have
No.
to keep it in the episode, but like that was one of the things about that book that I liked. And when I saw it in here, I was like, yes, please take me there. And like the way that the book ends was like, I'm so happy because I was kind of fingers crossed the whole time that this is where it was going.
Oh, good. I like to hear that. Um, no, there were a lot of ways where we could take that, and there's the we can uh, cop out a little bit. I think is to not fully embrace that rage moment, to not give that to yeah. Uh, Turn the other cheek is an idea, I guess, but there's only so much cheek turning you can do until it's just like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. We're going to do something different. So
Yeah.
I I definitely wanted to go full in on rage there.
Good. And I honestly feel like, and um, I think this is the time for it, you know,
Yeah.
in a way, and I won't go into social or political or whatever, but I feel like um, that we're kind of in an era of letting the bullies get away with stuff just doesn't make sense anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Obviously, yeah. That's where I'm at. It's we're going to make things right, and maybe the only way to make things right is to do some bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, I'm gonna take you on a little tour to like Robb
Okay.
in the eighth grade, because this is what it makes me think of. There's moments in your life where you get pushed and pushed and pushed. Finally, you push back, and then there's a result of it. And I was always a very nice, timid kid. I wasn't necessarily bullied, but I definitely wasn't the bully. And it was like eighth grade, and I was standing up from my desk, and this kid was walking past me, and he had been like kind of like he picked on me a bunch over a long period of time, and for some reason that day I just wasn't having it. And when I was standing up from my desk, this kid pushed me and said something to me, and I just pushed back without even thinking. I just pushed this kid back, and he like flew back and slid like across the floor. And it was that moment that I realized, oh, I'm like twice the size of this kid. Why am I letting this kid push me around? And then I was like, oh, I have power that I never really thought about. And surprisingly, no one tried to bully me after that. Like after that very public display of me, like literally whipping a kid across the room. And then I was like, there's something to this because I wasn't wrong. This kid's been wrong for a long time. And when I stood up, suddenly there's a different understanding of how things are. So that's the kind of thing that I think about with this type of story that you told.
Have you ever watched The Last Unicorn?
Oh, probably a super long time ago, but I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Well, for all my Last Unicorn folks out there, it's the unicorns were in the ocean forever, and they could have come out anytime they wanted, but they were afraid, and it took a big catalyst moment for them to come out of the ocean finally. It's just it's just like in Jurassic Park, where those raptors could have got out at any moment, but they were biting their. No, I'm kidding. It's not like Jurassic Park. It's a little bit.
All right, so we're gonna have to pause and acknowledge this because I don't remember exactly what you said, on social media, but you tweeted or whatever about doing this podcast, and you said that you were getting ready to talk a lot about Jurassic Park. So where does that come from? Was that random, or is there a reason for that?
No, I love Jurassic Park. Okay, so one of my trade secrets when I used to do a podcast, which was many years ago, was if I A, did not read the book, or B, did not like the book, I would somehow try and bring up Jurassic Park as much as possible. Because that was something that I was like, we can just talk about that. Everybody's seen Jurassic Park. This is going to be fun now. And that's my way of having a good time on the podcast if I didn't prepare or for whatever reason didn't enjoy what we were doing. So there's a little secret if I ever interviewed you and talked about Jurassic Park.
Now you know she didn't like your book or she
But
didn't read it.
Jurassic Park is my favorite movie in the world, and I think just about everything can be tracked back to that one way or another. I can't remember exactly what it was, but when I was promoting Antioch, Max had me write something like a little blurb for his newsletter that he does, and it was all about Jurassic Park 3, I think. And I was like, I hope this is what you wanted. And he's like, it's perfect. No worries, it's perfect.
Yeah,
So.
he would be the right audience for that kind of
Yeah.
tomfoolery.
That's
So so then the logical question is, did you put any Easter eggs in either of your books or anything that have to do with Jurassic Park?
No.
Now that I know that, it would make sense that you had, but it sounds like no.
No, I really didn't. But if given a not long enough timeline, I can tell you that I did. Like all of the women in the book in Conjuring the Witch are the dinosaurs, obviously. And then the men in the church are the people who are capturing the dinosaurs. Boom. Done. Jurassic Park. Call me Spielberg.
It's unassailable. It's unassailable.
It's perfect.
So then you must have caught that my response, clever girl.
Clever girl.
I was like, there's no better way for me to respond than saying clever girl.
That
So
is
that's
It was
yeah.
perfect. And I said something about it to my husband, and he's like, I don't know what that means. And I was like,
Well,
what? So then I actually acted it out in the living room, the whole scene where Laura Dern is running for the place because she's got to flip the power back on. Robert Metheny, has got his gun. It's the whole thing. It was great. We have fun times here.
If I didn't know how great of a husband and man he was, I'd be like, you got to find someone new. But Sean he's a great dude, so he gets a pass on not knowing that quote.
Yeah, he said he's only seen it like twice, and I feel like that's a failing on my part now. Like, what have I been doing?
Yeah, that's on you. That's on
It
you.
is, and he enjoyed my recreation of it, so that'll be fine.
A random, because we have to acknowledge Stephen Graham Jones at least once while we're talking.
Yeah.
So we're both wearing Stephen Graham Jones related shirts for anybody who's listening to audio, not watching video. In one of the many, so over the course of 10 years of doing a podcast, I've talked to Stephen Graham Jones several times. And it was only, I think, in the most recent one where it came out that he's a big fan of the show Justified, which is like
really?
one of my favorite shows. And like the reaction I had, it came up somehow, and I was like, I'm gonna fall into this hole of talking about Justified with Stephen Graham Jones, which would be amazing. But like, part of me was like, why didn't I know this earlier? Because we could have been talking about Justified this whole time. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like to hear that he's a fan of Justified, I'm like, yeah, I believe that. You're not making that up.
Of course he is. Of course he
is.
And then like in my mind, I'm like, do I start a podcast with him, or we just like talk about each episode? Or he wouldn't do that. He's too busy for that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh! But what a I don't think he sleeps.
I gotta tell you, and like he's like the nicest dude too.
Oh, he's great.
Nicest
he's
dude.
A wonderful guy. Love him, absolutely love him. But he's just, I interviewed him once when I podcasted, and his brain is just firing on all cylinders all the time. He's always got things going on. Like he is just thinking. He's got one of those brains. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. You can tell that. So there's types of people in the world. There's people who just see the world and accept it, and there's people who see the world and try to interpret it. And that guy is always trying to figure out what's going on, and like
Yeah.
thinking about it and like thinking about meaning, and just hearing him talk about any random like um, concept of storytelling. It's like this guy's really put some thought into this. Here's the nice thing about Stephen Graham Jones, though, and this is the type of person I love more than anything, is you can tell that he is an incredible fan of horror,
Hmm.
obviously slashers, but like you can tell he's got this kind of like childlike enthusiasm for that stuff, and that informs and builds like it helps his natural talent to make storytelling. So yeah, nothing but respect for that dude.
Yeah. And I want to definitely point out that we did not plan to both wear Stephen Graham Jones t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a
This
good point.
was
This is
a
totally
very happy coincidence.
this is because Rob did laundry last week, and it's clean.
Aw.
So um, so but all right, so we had a little aside. Let's get back to your story because I'm not done picking it apart with
Okay.
you. Let's talk about, so it's called Conjuring the Witch. There's a witch element to it, but like there is you it's hard, it would be hard to argue that there's not a haunting element to it.
Hmm.
Um so, and I feel like that part of it really fills out a lot of the creepiness of the book.
Hmm.
The kind of like the way that the witch element of the book manifests to the characters. So where'd that come from?
Yeah, so there is a big, almost haunted house vibe to some of it. And that's some of my favorite parts. I'll say, so there's the character Steve, who's kind of
Hmm.
one of our main protagonists. And while writing the book, I almost felt guilty because every bad thing seems to happen to Steve. This poor guy, he's just like, everything is sticking to him. Not everything, but a good ton of stuff gets to happen to him. And it was just, how do we bring, because the opening line of the book is there are witches in the woods, so how do we bring the witches out of the woods in a way that everyone, not just those people that are brave enough to or bold enough to go out into the woods can see them, but the people who are just out here, how can I make them see it? How can I give them something to look at? And so it manifests in kind of a little supernatural, little hauntings here and there, a little spooky stuff, to the point where, and it kind of goes to what we were talking about earlier, where your point of view becomes your kind of tunnel vision, where if I just would move down the road a little bit, I wouldn't
Yep.
see it this way. um, it makes the hauntings almost normal to some of the people that they're happening to the point where it's like, why wouldn't you just not do this stuff? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, what else are you going to do at this point? This is your house and there's stuff going on.
Yeah, especially Steve.
Yeah.
That some of the like the best parts of there's a part where um, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. It's harder and harder for him to kind of feel at home, I guess,
Hmm.
is like the vague way I'll say that. And that was just so effective, like because there was such a resignation to the way that perspective kind of played out, where it was like exactly what you're saying. In my mind, I'm like, just dude, just go somewhere else. But like, there's a reason where it's like, oh, obviously that sounds like the logical thing to do, but there's a reason where it's like, well, he's not doing that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Another thing that I thought was really well executed was um, there's an element of time, I guess, to the book where it's not that time is not normal, but there's you might catch something out of time as part of the story if I read it, if I
Yeah.
read it right. And I feel like that was another effective way to throw some creepiness onto the book. So um, is that a Jessica original? Was there anything that inspired that?
I think that was just Jessica original for the most part. It just something that kind of came out to me. I'll kind of a fun thing, actual time in the book was a real problem for me. I hate day of the week math in writing because I don't write every day like they tell you should. So like I'm coming back to it a month later. I'm like, oh my God, what day of the week was it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because the church schedule is very rigid. Like church is on Sunday and women's group is on Tuesday and fellowship is on Wednesday. So I had to know all those things. And in the first round of edits that Max sent back to me, there's these big things like, this cannot be what day it is. What is happening? So I had to go back and go, oh God, and I have to get paper notes and write, okay, Monday, Tuesday, and kind of figure all that out. But as far as the wonky parts in time or things kind of appearing out of their own time, that was just fun. That was just a little fun to have with the people, and it kind of helped me to show things that had happened. You know, there's a long history happening in the woods, and so to show that to everybody again, this was my way of showing that to people.
Right, because otherwise there would have to be like interludes or cutscenes or whatever to like another period of time or whatever.
Flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody wants
Um,
that.
no, that's good. I think that doing it the way you did established kind of the longevity of the problem. But you know, in the first couple acts or whatever of the story, but like it just threw that creepiness all over the place too. So it was helpful for that. I would say
Yeah.
so.
My main goal was to scare my husband and make Max laugh. And so those were the things when writing it that I try and think about. Like what would creep what would creep out my husband and what would make Max laugh. Because those are two very different things.
Is that why the husband in the book gets put through the ringer so much? Was he like an analog for the the husband in the book, Steve?
Oh no. No. No, not really.
But yeah.
Oh, sure. Uh, I didn't really even realize that I was doing so much to Steve until I kind of got towards the end, and I was like, oh man, one thing after another keeps happening. This poor guy. Oh well,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
What can you do? Um, but that makes me think too. Going not to go back to our best friend Stephen Graham Jones too much, but I feel like I've heard him say in the past that like with multiple things he's written, and maybe fucking who knows, maybe all of them, he writes about stuff that scares him. Like he's exploring a personal fear. And I know that probably not everybody does that, but was there any of that for you where you kind of like, it seems like so far in our conversation, we've explored that there's topics that you feel passionate about that we were exploring, but was there any fear that you were kind of uncovering in this as well?
Oh, absolutely. So I don't think it would be a shock or a spoiler. So when we talk about rage in the book, it's very strongly like a feminist rage.
Sure.
And we're in, kind of scary political times for women. And so there was a lot of that kind of fear informing it. The idea that, well, I can say one of the things that this particular church talks about is that women should be subservient to their husbands, and that, they need to take the back seat sort of, and they're just there to support the men. And so that was very much a like, where are we in this country right now? What kind of stuff is happening? Is that where we're going? So yeah, that was definitely kind of looking at what might scare me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that came through for sure. That definitely came through.
Oh, good.
And then I just thought about because it's so foreign to me. I flashed back to a long time ago. I went to a Southern Baptist wedding, and the the ceremony part was just completely bad shit. Where um, it was almost it was less of like a hey, you love each other and you're going to be happy together. It was more of like, okay, now that he caught you, here's the rules.
Right.
And the person that I was dating at the time was crazy liberal, and the reason we were there is because it was her family member, and that part of the family was just really that way. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, there, she's leaving, she's going to walk out, there's no way she's going to get through this whole ceremony because this is crazy. But it is very much like, here's the rules, woman. Like,
Hmm.
you're not a person, you're like property.
Yeah, it's just one step removed from. Well, I mean, never mind. I was going to say one step removed from a dowry, but your father gives you away at the altar. So, yeah, you still are.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's my thought. And like then I felt I had this like naive, I had this guilt about being the naive guy where I was like, okay, the rage is tied to the bullshit that's going on, not automatically tying like fear is the absolute first response that should be going on with like what some of the changes that are happening in our country. And like, because I don't have, you know, ovaries,
Right.
like it doesn't occur to me that fear is the first response, not necessarily the only response, but the first response. And so like, I need to read stuff like this because it's a perspective that I need to be aware of, and I need to like, you know, uh, I guess just be aware of and understand better.
Yeah. Well, they talk about fight or flight response, and I think a lot of it is both. You first have your flight, your fear response, and then you can turn around and have the fight. And I think a lot of the characters in my book have that. They have the no, we don't want this. We're going to run from this. We're going to hide from this. We're going to look everywhere but at it. And then it's like, okay, I can't get away from it now. Now it's time to make a decision.
Yeah. Oh, well, I have to say that I love where the what is it? So it's the protagonist and then two other women in the church. I think I love where the three of them kind of end up at the end of it.
Yeah.
Is great.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, it's very good. So it and to me, does it, and like tell me if I'm off on this, but it feels like um, and this could just be me reading into it or informing the story with my own feelings about things. Um, and man, I'm being very serious about this. We can be goofy and fun too, but sometimes we have like a feeling or an instinct or a way of being, but we just need to translate it into something. And like maybe sometimes we find the wrong thing to translate it into, and that has bad consequences. Like we're looking for the church to tell us what this means, and it's the wrong meaning.
Hmm.
But maybe because of that, that's the catalyst for us really figuring it out. And so like that bad thing took us to a better place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that totally. I have always been fascinated with religion, but like the mythology around religion. Even as a little kid, there would be these documentaries about like the Gnostic Gospels or some. So it's the ones that didn't make the cut to get into the Bible,
Right, right.
and so, but it's like, okay, but why? Who did made the decision that this story was the one that was super for real true, and this other one was like, nah, we're gonna toss that out. And so, yeah, those kinds of ideas of who decided that this was the path, who decided that you were the person to take us on that path, where are those decisions coming? Yeah, that's an interesting topic to me. I like to look at that sort of stuff. I like to question why is it this way. I think that's fun.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And I love that I basically get to spend time picking people's brains about like the stories they write, like because it's exploring things like that, and that is just the most satisfying thing in the world. Um, if so, aside from creeping out your husband, what was you
Yeah,
said there was two goals? It was creeping out your husband, and there was what was the other one?
making Max laugh.
Making Max laugh. So, like, besides those goals that you started out with, is there something that you'd like for people to get from this book in general, aside from just enjoying reading it? Is there like a like a hopefulness for you of like, hey, if you read this, I hope that you get that I'm going for this, or is it more just like, you know what, I hope you enjoy the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I hope they enjoy the experience, but yeah, I hope that they get um, a curiosity from it, a desire to question, a desire to look deeper at things that maybe you've just always accepted.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I've always kind of been that way, so maybe it was just me being like, yeah, she's on the right track. But yeah,
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 hey,
for sure.
whatever.
Um, then we can't. This is something I always suffered very horribly from with podcasting in the past that I refuse to do in this case because the fucking cover is so good. Oh my god!
It's so
So like, Antioch has an incredible cover.
good.
Conjuring the Witch has an incredible cover, and I cannot like it. The whole don't judge a book, but fuck that. This cover is great, and like people, even if you don't intend to read it, buy it because it's beautiful. But like, also read it because it's absolutely worth reading. But like, can we talk about that cover a little bit? Like, did you have any
Yes.
input, or was this like, how did that go?
No. So the same artist did both of my covers, Matthew Revere, um, and he is amazing. I'll tell you, it's funny because the Antioch cover, when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know if that's going to work. And then I kind of had to talk myself up for it because Max was like, Max is very give me your input, tell me what you want kind of thing. And so I was like, I'm not sure. And we played with it a little. And then I was like, no, it's fine. It's good. And people love the cover. And so I was like, okay, I'm really glad that I just trusted. So I'm not an artist in that way. I don't know. I can't make an art. So I trust the artists to do that. And so then when we were doing Conjuring the Witch, we obviously wanted him to do it because that cover was so amazing. And we're like, can you play with the colors again? Because Antioch is so bright. Can we do some colors? And it was like, yeah, if you put them next to each other, they look really pretty together too. Like it just
That's
really,
true. Yeah.
you're gonna have a really lovely Jessica Leonard collection on your shelf one day because they look great together. No, that was the very first thing that I saw for it. Max asked me if I had any ideas, and I had a few little things that I kind of sent over, and that came back to me, and I said, "Yeah, that's the one. That's perfect." Although my name was
Yeah.
misspelled the first time, so we fixed that.
I'm assuming your last name.
Yeah, my last name. I can't remember what it was. It was missing a vowel somewhere, but we fixed that. Other than
I've
that, perfect.
Yeah, and I've always really appreciated his covers.
Mm-hmm.
I think I first became aware of him doing book covers like back when Broken River Books did like their kind of initial stuff. Like
Yeah,
Stephen Graham Jones had that Lisa My Scars book, which has an awesome cover. Like he's been doing awesome stuff forever, and a Lit Reactor connection because
yeah,
he does Lit Reactor classes and stuff too, I believe. So yeah, the covers are just phenomenal for the video. For the people who are on the video, you see them right now, or at least you've been looking at the Conjuring the Witch one the whole time. And I'll throw Antioch on there too, just so like you can see it's gorgeous. That's got to be satisfying in itself, knowing that like you've got something going out that like honors, I guess, the story in a way.
yeah.
Because I feel like that really kind of conjures the vibe of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and then I have to give you credit for something before we move into our Jurassic Park discussion
Oh,
part
okay,
of
cool.
the podcast, where the title means something in the story um, in like a very significant way, definitely toward the end. But I think it kind of creeps around earlier, but then toward the end, it's like, okay, this is absolutely why this book is called that. So did the title come to you later? Like, where did the title come to you in the process of writing this?
Later. It was definitely much later. I had a working title, which was just Witches in the Woods forever. So everything was just WITW on it, on all of my stuff. But I knew, like for Antioch, I kind of just copped out on the title because I just named it after the town. So it didn't have anything really to do with whatever. So I was like, I want to really give this title a shot this time. But yeah, towards the end, like you said, when it really reveals itself as to how that comes about, I was like, oh, I think this is it. I think this is the one. So
Yeah.
that was a nice moment of discovery.
And I'm assuming everybody was cool with it right away, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Good. Yeah. Great title. Great cover. I love it when a title. So, like, here's the thing: when you read this book, you're going to get to a point where you're like, "Oh, that's why this is called what it is." But it also kind of like encapsulates a lot of the meaning of the story in a way. So that's like a lightning strike. I can't imagine that happens very often, where like the title is so significant to what's going on in the book.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it does or not, but I'm really happy with it. I was very
Yeah,
pleased to have that kind of moment. And I was definitely looking for it. But yeah, it kind of just struck.
good. No, I think it works. I think it works great. Do you have any final thoughts about Conjuring the Witch before I grill you about the Jurassic Park series?
No, I don't. Let's go.
um, and I didn't plan any of this. So, all right. So before we move away from that, I feel like everybody should. I don't do reviews anymore because here's the thing: reviews are subjective. I could review a book and say it's great, and then someone could read it on that basis and decide, oh, this is not for me. So I just don't do that anymore. So like if you've listened to this conversation and you feel like, oh, this is interesting, these are themes I want to explore, or that type of thing, absolutely, I 100% recommend this book. I think it was great. And then I was kind of scolding myself for not having gotten to Antioch, so uh, I'm going
This
to get to
one's
that one
better.
too
It's
and jump in
okay.
there. But it is my recommendation that if you listen to our conversation and it sounds like it's your thing, you should absolutely do that. Um, it is available when
May 2nd.
May 2nd. So I try to do these episodes a little bit at least ahead of the release of the book, so that there's opportunity for pre-orders and stuff like that. Or like you can check with your library and say, hey, please order this for me, that kind of thing. So I think it's absolutely a story that's worth checking out. I really enjoyed it a lot. I was messaging with Max. So anybody who's been listening is like, who the fuck is Max? Go back an episode. Or he's like the guy who runs Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, who published this book. So I was messaging with Max, and he's like, "What'd you think of the book?" And I sent him a whole bunch of stuff, which I can send you. I don't have any problem sending you as well.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Those are all great things." So that's
Good.
how I feel about the book. Um, Jurassic Park. Where does this come from? So I'm going to tell you a cute little story before we. So because I
Yeah.
have a Jurassic Park moment. So when Jurassic Park came out, was it like 93 or something like that? 92.
Somewhere.
We're going to look it up because this is important.
Okay, good.
Jurassic Park was 1993. So doing the math on that, I was born in 1978, so I was 15, and I went to see it in the theater for the first time with a girl who I just was totally in love with, and like a 15-year-old's love, um, who I was not dating, and so I go to see this movie. It's a great movie, but there was like a couple of moments where we're sitting next to each other, and like in the scary moments where like a jump thing happens, she like grabbed onto my arm. So like there's this blissful moment of like this person who's like the world to me, like grabbed onto me for safety in this like movie. So like forever, this is like almost 30 years later now, and I'm like, I will always remember that. That's like, and I ended up eventually dating this person, but um, so maybe it was Jurassic Park. It could be Jurassic Park could be responsible for
It
that
was.
relationship. Uh, so that's the first thing I think of when I think of Jurassic Park. But why is it so significant to you that it has shaped your life so?
So you said 93, so I was probably 10 when it came out. I was born into 82, but it was December. So very formative time. What you have to understand about where I grew up is that we did not have cable. We had a VCR, but we were not wealthy people. So we would get, some VHSs, but I would watch them into the ground because that was all there was to watch. Our first movies, we had Cinderella, which was for me, and Top Gun, which was for everybody else, I guess. Um, so when I was in kindergarten, first grade, Top Gun was my favorite movie. I could recite every line of Top Gun. It's right up there with Jurassic Park. It's not, I'm not saying it's the best movie, but it's one of my favorites because I watched it every day during the summer because that was kind of all there was. And I was like, what are they doing? Great stuff. So Jurassic Park, kind of the same way. I loved it when I saw it because I have always loved dinosaurs.
Okay.
Like all good and normal children, I love dinosaurs. And I had, a book called Dinosaur Time, and we would go through that great stuff. And but seeing them for the first time, like seeing those little dinosaurs, not on the big screen, didn't go to the theater, just on my little screen, it was so magic, and it's never lost that magic. Like the effects in that movie are
Yeah.
so good even today. So to see
Yeah.
that first Jurassic Park and that moment where the lake, right? They pull up to the little lake in their Jeep, and Grant takes off his glasses, and then jaws drop, and then they span up, and then the music goes, all of that is so fucking cool, man. I love it. And then when the dinosaurs attack, very scary. I really like to get scared. I get scared. Like I was the kid that got made fun of at sleepovers because I'm like watching through my fingers while they're watching Pet Cemetery or whatever, and I have nightmares and I can't deal with it. But I definitely learn to embrace that as I get older. Like it's cool that I get scared at scary movies. That's what they're for. That's what they're supposed to do, is scare me. Good
Mm-hmm.
for me. I have the correct emotions. But so that was very scary. And then the second one, I read the book. I read The Lost World before I watched the movie, and I was like, it was way over my head. It's so scientific. But I
Okay.
was
Yeah.
like, this is great. This is going to be great. And then the movie was like not as great, but it's still pretty okay. And then the third one is just a horror movie. And that's
Yeah.
what I like. It is just straight up horror movie. I'm terrified of birds. That's a secondary fact about me. So in the third one, there's the scene they're in a giant like bird cage, basically, and a pterodactyl like walks towards them on a bridge. Horrifying. I
Yeah.
would rather be dead than have that happen to me. So yeah, those are great formative times for me. I love dinosaurs and I love being scared, and it's just a timeless movie.
That's awesome. You actually reminded me of a conversation I had very recently about Jurassic Park with a friend of mine who just came over and was hanging out, and his whole take. So, did you read the original book, the first book?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Much later, but yeah, I did.
yeah. So he was talking about how he read the book before going to see the movie, and obviously there's differences between the two, but like he was saying, I don't know why more people don't read the book because the book is fucking amazing,
Hmm.
and it's just got so much more than the movie. But like he loves the movie too, obviously. So I have not read any of the Jurassic Park. I haven't read either of those books, but that was an interesting perspective too, which was like if you fucking liked that, there's even more to be explored when you read the books.
Hmm. Oh yeah, there absolutely is, and it, like I said, a lot of it was over my head when I read it, but it's exciting and it's scientific and it's dinosaurific. So everything
Dinosaurific.
I can do, and I cannot tell you how much it broke my heart that the last one, the world one that they just did, the last world one, it was terrible. It was so
Yeah.
bad, and
Yeah.
I was so depressed. Really bad time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could point to a low point. I think it was the third one where doesn't Alan in the airplane dream that a raptor is saying his
And
name?
he says his name. Yes,
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with
Like,
that.
I guess if you were Alan Grant, it would be totally normal to have a dream where a raptor was trying to wake you up by saying your name.
Yeah.
So, um, it just was kind of schlocky on in the movie.
Yeah.
It it makes sense in the context of the story, but it just didn't play. I don't think it played well.
It doesn't even
Um,
really make all that much sense. But yeah, no, I give that one a pass because it has the very scary dinosaurs in it.
yeah, that's fair. Um, so you got your Jurassic Park moment,
Yes,
which I was not planning, but I figured I couldn't
it's okay.
not let you talk about Jurassic Park. Which, yeah, it really holds up. Like it holds up as a story. It
It
holds up
does.
from a special effects perspective. Um, the reason that it even came up in conversation was because my friend wanted to see how good the speakers were that I had connected to my television, and he's like, "Just play Jurassic Park." Like, so was his first thought was like, "Play Jurassic Park." So we did some of like the running around crazy dinosaur moments, and he was like, "Yeah, they're pretty good."
That's awesome. That's
Um,
awesome.
all right, shifting gears.
Okay.
What so like we've talked about your book, and I've said awesome things about it because because I really enjoyed it. I really liked it a lot. What are you reading anything right now that you're excited about, or is there authors that are currently existing in your world that you're excited about that you want to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had just said I was reading Jac Jemc's currently, um, and I can't think of the name of it. My Only Wife, I think is the title. Something wife. I think it's My Only Wife. It's in the other room. But that one is really good. It's not, I wouldn't call it a horror, or at least not up until this point. It's very much like a sinking drama, like a sad fucking what? Ugh, man. But it's great. It's a really lovely book. Real recently, so I don't when I'm writing, I don't really read much because I
Okay.
I have this thing where I'm terrified I'm going to start mimicking what other people sound like when I do it,
Yeah,
which
that's
I've
fair.
been told just to get over it, but that's a tough one. I'm afraid to. So I have not read a whole lot real recently, but I did read Below by Laurel Hightower, and that came out through Max's Press through Ghoulish. It's a super quick read, and it's super good. I love that book. She has a way of making you feel so sad and so scared all at the same time, and that's really a special gift. So really big shout out to that one.
So Conjuring the Witch is actually I found it to be a pretty quick read too. So I read it in two sittings. Once I was hanging out with my girlfriend and we are just kind of like chilling, and I was like, I'm gonna get crack this book, and I read like the first 20%, and then the next time I started reading, I finished it. So I feel like it's got a pretty accessible pace. And then I was thinking, like for podcasting, when you're talking about books, where you have to read a book and then talk to a person and everything, pace is like really important
Yeah.
because like if it takes me like a week to read a book, that's not good. So I've recently I've been trying to convince myself that I need to start reading more novellas, and I think it's because they're just not as many pages, not necessarily because there's something magical about novellas.
Right.
But that's where I'm kind of like I'm at in my life is that I'm trying to cheap out on what I read just to like um, not spend so much time reading. But holy shit, there's some great novellas, that have been coming out for a long time. But like recently, I feel like I'm just so excited about. I'm going to say one more time, "The Salt Grows Heavy," because I feel like there's parallel themes in both of those. Cassandra Caw, and then like I keep hearing Tor Nightfire, which is like their horror imprint, is going nuts with putting out novellas now. So I feel like novellas for me are going to be um, not as overlooked as they have been in the past. So, but I think maybe that's just I need to tell myself stop being such a baby and read full size books. I don't know.
No, I think that's great. I think short books and long titles are really having a moment right now.
Right? Oh my God! Yeah, I'm talking to one of the people. I'm talking to Eric LaRocca
Yep.
in May, and it's for Everything the Darkness Eats, and that's his first novel. But I have two of his story collections. I think, yeah, short story collections or novellas or whatever. And yeah, he can't make a title that's less than like 6 words. So you're dead on.
Yeah, it's definitely having a thing. And I remember 10 years ago, we'll say, I would come across a book that had a very long title, and I'm like, what are you doing? Shorten that. That's dumb. And now it's
Yeah,
very in vogue. It's very a thing. So it's like,
yeah,
well, they were just ahead of their time.
yeah. I think back in the day, it was J. David Osborne would
Yeah,
be
that's
like,
exactly who I was thinking of.
yeah. What's the one? By the time we leave here, we'll be
By the
friends,
time,
or
low down death,
L-
right? Easy.
Low Down, Death Right Easy. Yeah, he
Tongue
was doing the big
twister.
titles. Yeah, it's really a thing. It's really a thing right now. I think you're
Hmm.
absolutely right about that. Everything the Darkness Eats. Yeah, I'm looking at. So you can't see this, but on my wall is just a ton of post-it notes with like
Oh,
author names and books. And Cassandra Kah has one with Richard Kadri coming out later this year called "The Dead Take the A Train," which I think is an awesome title.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, there's some. Here's the thing. I feel like the longer you appreciate books and like get like immersed into like a world of reading, and especially like into a genre, the more amazing people that you suddenly discover. And it's like, fuck, I have to read like 50 books a year just to like not fall behind. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's tons of post-its all over my wall. Would you ever do podcasting again, or are you pretty much in your lane with the writing thing?
Yeah, I think I'm just in my lane. I enjoyed it in the time, but it consumes so much of your time if that's
Oh
not
yeah.
your main thing. So I always wanted to be writing, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'll meet so many great people. I'm going to do so much, and then I wrote almost nothing the whole time I was podcasting because I was constantly immersed in other people's words and other people's books. So I was like, okay. So, and then as soon as I stopped, I was like, I'm never reading another book unless I absolutely want to read it. Because I had a
Yeah.
co-host, and so
Yep.
it would be like, oh, this one's one of her books she brought in. And I'm like, I don't want to read this book. And so I wouldn't. And I talk about Jurassic Park. Just kidding. No, I'm not kidding.
She's not kidding. Yeah, that's true. And I think that because I have no aspirations to write things,
Yeah,
that kind of works for me because
it
like this is my
helps.
outlet, this is my thing, this is my creative deal. But yeah, I have to imagine. So like Max Booth, we've talked about so much.
Oh my gosh.
This guy runs the publishing company,
Hmm.
writes books, um, does his multiple podcasts,
Hmm.
right? Um, is doing this book festival. Talk about really overcommitting yourself. I think the only benefit for him is that like his wife is like in the same world.
Yeah,
Um,
she's his partner in it, so
or
that
yeah,
helps. But
soon to be
yeah,
wife, I guess.
soon to be wife. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
getting married at the Ghoulish Book Festival, which is pretty amazing. I'm told there will be cake, so I'm pretty happy. Uh,
cake is great.
but yeah, I don't know how he does all that he does because he's also got. I will make the excuse over and over, like, well, I have a child, I have my husband. He also has those things, so I'm like, well, you're just better than me. I don't know, Max, you're just doing it better. But he definitely he's very committed to it. He's very committed.
We all have our lane,
Yeah,
and
he's in
his
all of
lane
them.
his lane is all of them. Yeah, apparently. But like, here's what I'll say: stay in your lane because I really enjoyed Conjuring the Witch. And are you? Is there another project on the horizon, or is there a break in between them right now?
Yeah, so no, nothing like announced coming out or anything like that. I'm working on writing another one now, which my my husband really wanted me to do something with a monster in it, so we're seeing how that goes.
Cool,
It
good. Well, I look forward to.
might be metaphorical monsters. We'll see.
The monster's name is Sean.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's we did a great job, I think, in breaking this down and talking also about dinosaurs. So,
Yes.
um, thank you so much for taking some time and joining me.
Ah, well, thank you for having me. This has been great. A dream.
Dream, calm down.
No. Okay.
um,